Postgres is now generally available on PlanetScale. In this video, I'm going to show you what it looks like to create a new database and some of the awesome features that you get. So if you've just created a new organization, you won't have any databases in it yet, but you can create a new one. And I'll just call this new Postgres. And we'll select an appropriate region. Generally, you want your database region to be the same as where all of your other infrastructure is. The key question, which we're here to talk about Postgres today, but PlanetScale also does Vitess databases, which is a great ultra scalable way to run MySQL databases in the cloud, but we'll stick with Postgres. And then the other big choice is, do you want network attached storage, in this case EBS, or Metal? EBS is great for storage flexibility, but Metal is what you probably want if you want really high I/O performance. So for each of these, there are, depending on the region, options for either using ARCH64 or x86-64, and you can kind of choose either one in here, right? So there's lots of different x86 options. You can see for Metal different built-in storage sizes, and it even tells you what underlying instance type it is. But I'm going to create something really simple for now, just a simple PS10 on an Intel architecture. You can kind of see the overview here, and then I'm going to hit Create Database. This is going to take a few minutes to create, so let's switch to a database that I already have ready to go with some queries running on it. So we'll switch over to here. This is a database that I was using for benchmarking a couple of days ago, and this is what your dashboard looks like. So by default, you get, for your production branches, your database branches, you get a primary in one availability zone, but then also two replicas with the same specs in other availability zones, and this is for high availability purposes. And you also get a nice overview, since this is a Metal disk, right? It's a fixed size disk, and so you can see like how much storage you're using, the resource usage, a number of different things, how many IOPS you have, most expensive queries that have run recently, things like this, right? So this gives you a great overview of just what's going on with your main database, resource usage, when your next maintenance window is, billing cycle information, all that kind of stuff. Let's look at some of my favorite features over on this side. And first, let's start with insights. I'm going to jump over to a view where I'm looking at query latency, and I can switch to other things too over the past hour. And you can see this really nice graph where I can see my P50 and P95, P99, even all the way up to you can enable and disable a max query line. So it depends on what you want to see. And you can also get detailed views on all of your individual queries. And you can sort by things like which ones have read the most rows, or which ones have executed the most amount of times if you sort by count. And doing things like rows read versus over rows returned, for example, is a great way to narrow in on queries that maybe aren't performing well. And you can expand this out. You can see the spark lines for these. You can add columns, and you can even go and look specifically at a query that you think might not be performing well, look at what indexes it's using, and all kinds of like really, really great information that you get there. But you can also go and look at other tabs. You can look at queries per second information. You can look at information about rows read, rows written, and even get a summary of what errors are happening when, and kind of see which errors are happening and how frequently they are. So this is basically one of the places to go if you want to drill in on what queries are executing on my database and how they are performing. Let's also look at another view that I have. I've just pulled this up. I mentioned I used this for benchmarking recently. And so this was a window of time where I was doing benchmarking. So this is a graph that's kind of fun looking, but it's not something you typically see in production. So these are all little short bursts of benchmarking. And you can also see that in between these runs, I changed configurations. And these indicators actually show when you changed a Postgres config. So you can make very nice correlations between performance changes and the configuration changes that you're making. And I can even click on one of these, and what it will do is it'll bring me over to my cluster configuration changes area in the cluster config, and it'll highlight that one that I just clicked on that corresponds to this parameter change that I made. And I can go and look at the history of my parameter changes. And while we're in here, I'll show you. There's a bunch of things you can configure, but this is the parameters page where you can tune your Postgres parameters. And you can change your instance size. You can do a number of different things in here for controlling your cluster, upsizing, downsizing. If you were on network attached storage, you would have options in here to change settings about that. So this is a great place to go for managing those kinds of things. Let's also go and look at the metrics page. So I really like this page as another way to get insight into what's happening on your database. So this is basically showing the metrics, right? Things like CPU and memory utilization, shows you how many IOPS you're using. You can expand out these graphs you'd like to. Storage, how many PG bouncer connections you're using. So a number of different things. And also down here, there's some other interesting graphs too, like a more detailed memory breakdown on how much is active cache versus how much is inactive cache, your transaction rate, your number of connections, and you can see them broken down by connection type. You can see your ingress and egress. So this is a great place to go to kind of see more what's going on in terms of connections and resource usage and networking, whereas the Insights page is good for looking at what's happening with your queries and query performance. Let's also take a look at the logs page. This is a good place to go if you're debugging problems, right? If you're having connections dropping for some reason, or if you're just having unexpected behavior from your database, we've got really powerful information to filter logs by their level. So you can look at, maybe you only want to look at warning logs, or you want to look at info and warning and error logs. We've got a search feature where you can search and filter by different keywords. Right now, this is just looking at the past hour, but you can actually filter out with much more details, and you can go back up to about a week of data. So if you're like, hey, 2 days ago, I was having some kind of issue with my app connecting to my database. Let's look at the logs and see what it was saying. So this is a super powerful place to go for drilling into issues that you might be having like that. So if you want to get migrated to Postgres on PlanetScale as soon as possible, what I recommend doing is going to our new docs site, clicking on the Postgres tab, and then going down to imports. And we have a number of generic guides for doing DMS, dump or store, wall streaming, as well as some provider-specific guides. And we even also have, like if I click on those Aurora ones there, and if I went to click on the Postgres migration scripts, we actually have a set of scripts that you can use to sort of help make the process of doing a migration easier and kind of automate some of the tedious parts of doing a migration. So we got lots of great tooling as well as great support. So reach out to us, start using the scripts, and welcome to PlanetScale for Postgres.